Hello there, all my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina at CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these heartbeat wirework bracelets. Now they match perfectly with the previous ring that I did, which I also have a tutorial for, so I'm going to leave a link to that in the description box down below. Otherwise, if you want to learn how to make these bracelets, then keep watching. So the wire that I'm using is a regular round copper wire, and the first gauge is a 1mm, that's going to be the base wire. And then I'm also using a 0.4mm for the weaving wire. For the tools, we of course need some flush cutter to be able to cut our wire, some tweezers and nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and then I'm using my 6-step bell making pliers to help make the hat so they're consistent throughout. Now the material list will be in the description box down below along with useful links. Otherwise, let's get our wire and tools ready and let's get started. So then the length of wires that we'll need to cut is first of all a length of our 1mm of about 1 meter and 20 centimeters. So for reference, the length of my bracelet is about 7.5 inches. So if you want to make it larger or smaller, of course you can adjust the length of this wire as well. Now as for the 0.4mm, I've cut a length of about 50 centimeters or so. Doesn't have to be anything specific because we're just going to use short little lengths of attaching wire together, and you can always cut off more if you need it. So I'm going to grab my length of 1mm first of all, and we need to find the midpoint of this. So you can either measure it or you can put the two ends together and then go all the way up to where the midpoint will be, and then we have a little loop here. Then I'm going to grab my tweezers and nose pliers and place them roughly where the midpoint is, and then I want to bend one length over the other, so over the pliers there, to kind of come back on itself. Just put a nice bend in there, and then we have something like that. I want to then tighten that up, so basically like we're making a prong. So put it at the back of your pliers and just squeeze it tight until we've closed up that gap, and then this is now our midpoint and we can start working from here. So I'm going to flip this upside down so I have the bend here coming down towards me, and then grab my 6-step bell making pliers. Now I'm going to be using the third smallest step on these, and then I want to place them basically right where that bend is, as close to it as you can get without the pliers slipping off. Obviously I have the step I'm going to use on this side. Just grab one of the wires at a time, doesn't matter which one, just separate them out and then bring this towards the side where that step is and bring it around and downwards. So what we're doing now is starting to create that first hat. So the bend that we made is going to be the cleft, and now we're creating the sides. Now of course for the other side we need to swap the pliers, and then this length needs to also be brought around, but on the other side there, to create the other side of the hat and come down towards the bottom so they can meet up and create the full hat. And once we have that, I'm going to grab my tweezers and nose pliers again, and I want to place them at the very bottom point there of the hat where the wires basically meet up. So just do one at a time, because then what we want to do is bring the wires back downwards, straighten them back out basically, and have them come straight down from the point of the hat. And we want the two to end up sitting next to each other. So one, grab onto the other one and bring that down as well. So they end up sitting next to each other like this. And this is then the point where I'm going to bring in my weaving wire, because we now need to fasten these two lengths together. So obviously the hat becomes closed, and I'm just going to place my weaving wire behind the hat, just leave a short little tail we can hold on to. And I'm just going to use the diagonal wire weave to do it with. So I'm going to wrap around the bottom wire first of all by itself, push that up, and then I'm going to go over the top of both of them, come down behind and up between the two, push that down so we can go around the top one by itself and down behind again. And now you can just grab some pliers if you need to and tighten that weave up, and that's one round of the weave. So what I'm going to do is do this 3 times. So again, around the bottom one by itself, over the top of both of them, then up between the two to wrap around the top one by itself. And then we'll come down behind again. And again, as you can see, be helpful pushing them together using your pliers. And I'm just going to do one more round. And now that I have the 3 rounds there, I'm going to take my cutters and just go in, cut off the excess and just leave a short little tail. Now you can finish off the weaving wire on this section now. I personally like to just leave little tails and go back and do it at the end. That's completely up to you. But then I still have the rest of my length here to use for the following sections we need to connect. But then, as you can see, we then have our first hat there, and then we just need to continue and creating more hats below it. So to get the wires into position for the next hat, I'm going to grab my tweezers and nose pliers here, and I'm going to place them on the 2 base wires but just below that weave that we did. And then I want to kind of flip the hat back over the top of the pliers so we end up with the wires going straight over the top of the hat there. Now we have that bend. What I want to do is tighten that up. So I'm just going to put this right to the back of my pliers and then tighten these up, something like that. And then we of course need to basically start creating the hat that we did to begin with in the same way. So in order to kind of have space to get our pliers in there, I'm just going to start gently separating out the wires a bit. So the one to the left, just bring that further out to the left. And you can already start to put a curve in there. And then one to the right, bring it out to the right. And then as I'm moving where I can see I can start to fit my pliers in, bring your 6-step bail making pliers back. And using the same step on the pliers as the first one, I'm going to place them just on one side at a time and just kind of get them on the wire where you can get the pliers into. And then we can just start rolling the wire down and just keep moving further and further up the wire until we can just check and see if we're happy with how that side looks. So we can also just do a bit at a time on each side so we can also keep the hat symmetrical. And then of course we need to start bringing the ends in as well towards each other so we get that crossover point just like we did in the first one. So we create that point of the hat as well. And once we're happy with how the hat looks, we can bring in the tweezers nose pliers again, and we just need to finish off the bottom here, and that's the exact same way as the top one. So where they cross over, we need to bring them out one at a time, back down straight, and the same with the other one. Bring it straight down so we can have them end up laying right next to each other like that. And then just like before, to seal this bottom point in place, bring in what you have left of your weaving wire, place it behind, leave a short tail, and then we just need to do those 3 rounds of weave in the exact same way. So weave around the bottom one by itself, over the top of both of them, up between the two, so we can wrap around the top one by itself, and then come straight down behind. And just like before, do that for 3 rounds. Then cut the excess weaving wire off, leaving a short tail. Just push it up and out of the way. And now that hat is done, we need to get the wires in position to create the next one, which is where we bring in the tweezer nose pliers, place them just a little bit below the weave we made there on the base wires, and then just push the hats back over the top of the pliers. I just find that a little bit easier than using the long wires to push, but whichever is easier for you. So we get that kind of bend, and we then need to tighten that up. Place it at the back of your pliers so we close up that gap, and then we have the wires coming straight over the top of the hats again there, and basically are in a perfect position to start the next hat, which is where we just start separating out the base wires to each their own side, just like we did on the previous one, and then get them in position so we can start using the pliers. Again, using that same step on the pliers so we get each hat the consistent size. So you just want to keep doing this throughout until you reach the length that you need. So I now made all the hats here all the way along until I reach the length that I need, and then on this end we're going to make the other end of the clasp. And as you can see, where I've ended up is where I've attached the 2 base wires together using a weaving wire there from my last hat. So instead of making another hat now, I'm going to use these 2 lengths of the base wire to make a hook with each of them. So I'm just going to separate them first. So just push them out to their own side where they're coming from. And then I'm going to grab my tweezer nose pliers here because we need to put some bends into a wire. So I'm just starting on one side at a time. It doesn't matter which one you start on. I'm going to go out a couple of centimeters or so. So we need to make sure we go out long enough so we can bend it back and create a hook shape. So we're going to kind of make a prong first of all. And then I'm going to bend this left wire that I'm working with around, so towards the outside and all the way back on itself like that. And then I'm going to tighten this right at the back of the pliers. So we kind of create that prong or something like that. And then down here, I'm going to grab onto it and then just kind of straighten it up a little bit so it comes straight along the hats. We then need to repeat on the other side. So I'm placing my pliers at the same point there so we get the same length, and then push this in the opposite direction. So again, towards the outside, and just same principle, bring it all the way around. And then we want to tighten that up as well in the same way. And then down here, just create that little bend in the wire. So we straighten it back out and it comes straight downwards next to the other one. And from there, I'm going to bring these ends just one at a time down through the hat. So they're coming over the top. So I'm taking the very end, just put a gentle curve into it, bring it down through the hat to come out at the back, and then kind of push it right down towards the bottom of the hat there. You can just do the same with the other one. And then as it's almost wrapped all the way around, take the flush cutters and cut off the excess. And then we just want to tighten that down. So basically we get a nice tight wrap around the base wire, and that then also finishes off the wire itself. And of course just do the same on the other side. And then to actually make them into hooks, we just need to bend them back on themselves again. So I place my pliers roughly just below the midpoint, and then I'm going to bend the outer part underneath and back on itself so that when we look from the side we can see that hook shape there. And obviously just push it as tight as you need, and then the same with the other one. on. So we now finished both hooks, and of course you can also adjust the angle here that you need to, because these will then hook into the very first hat that we made. Obviously we also need to shape this, but before we do any of that, we just need to get rid of all these excess wires if you haven't done that already. So you just want to get your cutters and then go in and cut off the excess, just leaving a tiny little tail like that. So if you put your finger over, you can probably feel that sticking out, so we just need to flatten that down. So I like to push it flat and then roll the pliers in the direction that the wrap is going as well, so that'll tuck it in and out of the way. You can just go through and literally do that with all of them, and then all that's left to do is shape it. So you can either shape it around something that has a size and shape you want it to have, like a bracelet mandrel, or you can just use your hands and fingers. So just start somewhere and start putting a curve into it. Obviously make sure the front of the bracelet is outward, and then just go back and forth. Don't just go into one place and make a big bend, that'll make it out of shape, but just gradually add more and more of a curve until you have the two ends meeting up, so we can obviously use the clasp. And then you have the clasp fully incorporated into the bracelet as well, so you just hook it in like that into that very first hat, and then you have your finished bracelet ready to wear. So make sure to check out the description box below the video. There's going to be links to both my shop and also where you can sign up to my newsletter. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.